You don't owe them an explanation, not for your silence, not for your standards, not for your pace, not even for your healing. But somewhere along the way, you were taught that to be good, to be accepted, you had to explain everything. Why you left, why you stayed, why you chose differently, why you're not like them. And so, you began to over-explain, to shrink your truth into justifications, to offer your thoughts like apologies. The Stoic sees through this, because explanation, when done to seek permission, is not communication, it's surrender. Seneca said, "A man is not upset by events, but by his opinion of events." And most of the time, when you're explaining yourself, you're trying to shift someone else's opinion instead of protecting your peace. Let's be clear, this isn't about arrogance. It's not about shutting people out. It's about knowing your truth so clearly that it doesn't need constant defense. Because if you always explain, you're always asking to be seen, asking to be approved, asking to be safe. And the Stoic doesn't ask. The Stoic acts. You say what needs to be said once. You express what's essential calmly. Then you move forward, not emotionally, but decisively. So how do you stop explaining yourself? You begin by observing the impulse. When someone questions your decision, pause. Not everything deserves a response. Not every question needs your energy. If it's asked with curiosity, answer with clarity. But if it's asked to control, provoke, or undermine, you meet it with stillness. You say, "I'm at peace with my choice." Or sometimes, you say nothing at all. Silence is not weakness, it's precision. The Stoic uses words like a blade, sharp, minimal, intentional. They know that over-explaining only creates more noise, more misunderstanding, more power handed away. You don't need to convince someone to value your path. You need to value it enough yourself to walk it quietly. You don't need to repeat your boundaries until they're accepted. You need to hold them even when they're not. And here's what happens when you stop explaining. The wrong people fall away. The right people lean in. And most importantly, you regain your center. You realize that your life is not a courtroom. You are not on trial. You don't exist to defend your peace at every turn. You are allowed to evolve in silence, to pivot without notice, to grow without permission. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple, clear, final. That's the Stoic's way, not to become cold, but to become undistracted, unmoved by noise, free from the constant need to explain. Every time you over-explain, you trade your peace for approval. It might feel harmless, a little more detail here, a little justification there, but over time, it becomes a reflex, a silent habit of self-doubt. The Stoic knows this isn't about words, it's about energy. Every explanation you don't need to give is an invisible leak in your confidence. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." And freedom isn't loud, it's in the restraint. In knowing that you don't have to explain why you're leaving a room, why you're no longer entertaining drama, why you're focused on yourself. Because here's the truth. Over-explaining weakens your presence. When you explain too much, you appear uncertain, even when you're not. You invite people to question decisions that are already final. You allow doubt to take root where clarity once lived. And worse, you teach others that your boundaries are negotiable, that your peace is up for discussion, that your self-trust is fragile. This isn't about becoming rigid or closed. It's about being rooted. So next time someone says, "Why are you doing that? Why aren't you coming? Why don't you respond like you used to?" Pause. Ask yourself, do they really need to understand me? Or do they just want me to revert? Because not everyone deserves your reasoning. Some people only want access, not understanding. And every time you give them that access, you dilute your energy. You step out of alignment to prove a point that never needed proving. So how do you stop? You start with one word: no. Not no, because, not no, I just think, not no, but maybe later, just no. It's a full sentence. It's complete. It's clean. Then you build on that. When you leave, you leave. When you change, you change. No long speeches, no apologies for outgrowing what doesn't fit. You realize that your presence speaks louder than your explanations ever could, because the strongest people don't speak to be understood. They speak to be clear, and the ones who need you to explain are often the ones who want to keep you small. But you're not small anymore. You've trained, you've chosen clarity, you've chosen discipline. Now choose quiet. Not every silence is weakness, and not every word is strength. There's power in knowing when to speak and when to let the silence stand. The Stoic doesn't avoid words. They simply respect them. They know that each word is a tool, and every tool can either build or break. Most people speak to escape tension, to fill silence, to manage perception, to prove they're good, smart, or right. But the Stoic speaks only when it serves purpose, not emotion, not ego. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize you have compromised your integrity. When you speak to be approved, you lose power. When you speak to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you, you waste energy." So how do Stoics choose their words? They begin with the question, is this necessary? If not, they wait. They observe. They let space do the talking, because silence is a filter. It reveals intention. It exposes pressure. It protects what matters. You don't explain your discipline. You don't narrate your healing. You don't justify your boundaries. You live them. And when you do speak, you speak with clarity, with pause, with calm. You say just enough, no more, because truth doesn't need backup dancers. You don't react to every comment. You don't argue your worth. You don't perform. You communicate to connect, not to prove. And this is where your strength shows. When others talk louder, you speak clearer. When others try to provoke, you stay rooted. When others demand your story, you protect your peace. This is not passivity. This is power, directed. You've trained your mind. You've learned to hold stillness. Now, you speak only when speaking adds value. Let others overshare. Let them overreact. Let them explain their lives away. You walk quiet, but not hidden. You walk focused, but not hard. You walk free, because your truth no longer needs to be broadcasted to be real. If this message hits somewhere deep, subscribe to Inner Fort, not for noise, but for reminders of the quiet strength you're already building. Being misunderstood is uncomfortable, but needing to be understood, that's a trap. Most people shape their lives around other people's comprehension. They adjust their truth to fit someone else's narrative. They soften their power so it won't be questioned, and in doing so, they lose themselves. The Stoic walks a different path. They don't expect the world to understand their silence, their discipline, their sudden shifts. They don't beg to be seen, because visibility isn't validation, and misunderstanding is not a threat. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know what they're talking about." Let that sink in. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true to yourself, especially when that truth is quiet, subtle, and slow. Because here's the truth. Most people misunderstand what they're not ready for. They misunderstand stillness as weakness, boundaries as coldness, focus as arrogance, change as betrayal. You don't correct them, you don't argue, you don't perform softness just to make them comfortable. You remain centered. The ones who matter will observe your consistency, not your explanations. And when someone asks, "But why are you like this now?" you simply say, "I'm choosing a different way." No defense, no lecture, just presence. Because true strength isn't proven in words. It's proven in the ability to hold silence when noise is expected. You are not distant. You are deep. You are not hiding. You are healing. You are not angry. You are focused. You don't need to be decoded. You need to be respected. And if they can't respect you without full access, they never really valued you, only their version of you. So let them misunderstand. Let them wonder. Let them talk. While you build, while you rise, while you breathe in the freedom that comes from no longer needing to explain. You don't live in their opinions anymore. You live in your alignment. And in that space, you are untouchable. There's a shift that happens when you stop explaining, you stop chasing understanding, and you start commanding respect. Not because you asked for it, but because you embodied it. When you no longer justify your rhythm, your silence, your distance, your ambition, people feel it. Not as arrogance, but as authority. You stop being accessible to every opinion. You stop being editable. You stop being a mirror for other people's insecurities. And you become something else entirely, a quiet force. Seneca said, "Let the quality of your character be your shield." That's what happens when you stop explaining. You build character that needs no defense. You walk into a room and don't shrink to fit it. You say less, but everything you say lands. You become the calm one in the chaos. Not because you're above it, but because you've mastered what's within. And here's what people notice. Your energy isn't up for debate. Your choices don't tremble under questions. Your boundaries don't wobble with pressure. This is real leadership, not titles, not followers, but self-direction. You lead by presence, by action, by alignment. You don't have to tell people what you're about. They feel it in how you move, how you pause, how you say no without guilt, and yes without explanation. This is what sets you apart. While others try to convince, you clarify. While others try to impress, you simplify. While others try to be understood, you understand yourself. You become the reference point, the anchor, the mirror that reflects stability, not approval. And suddenly, people shift around you. They adjust their tone. They respect your time. They stop pressing for answers because they know you don't owe them any. You're no longer trying to be relatable. You're focused on being real, and in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. That's what happens when you stop explaining, you stop proving, and start leading. There is a kind of peace that can't be explained, only felt, only lived. It comes the moment you stop needing to be known by people who never tried to see you. The moment you let go of defending your peace, your silence, your pace, your standards. That moment, you become untouchable. You don't ignore people. You transcend the need for them to understand. You don't fight their narratives. You stop feeding them with your time, your words, your energy. You simply walk forward. Marcus Aurelius never shouted his values. He lived them, quietly, consistently, powerfully. He wrote for himself, led through storms, loved through loss, commanded without noise. That's what you've built. That's what silence trained you for. So now, let them wonder. Let them ask why you stopped showing up to certain places, why you don't explain yourself anymore, why you're so calm now, why your peace feels like power. You don't need to answer. They don't need to understand your growth. They just need to see its weight. And if they never do, that's okay. Your life is not a broadcast. It's a statement, written in habits, in presence, in restraint. You've outgrown the urge to narrate your evolution. Now, you simply become. The next version of you doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be lived. So walk quietly, but carry everything you've earned. Let your discipline speak where your voice no longer needs to. This is your power. This is your peace. This is your inner fort.